Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor, as always, from wonderful freezing, and when I say freezing, I mean 55 degrees, New Orleans, Louisiana.
With finally no hurricane coming.
No, well, we're not going to give that up until like at least another 2 weeks. There have been stray hurricanes in November in the past. So we are.
There's still time.
There is absolutely still time. This was the most active. Obviously, because global warming is all just a myth. We had 30 active hurricanes this season, 9 of which made landfall in the United States, 4 of which were in Louisiana, all of which were records.
Wow.
But that's all just coincidence, I'm sure.
Yes. Anyway, sorry. Keep going, Tom.
Patriot, as always, Rocky Messing, live here from still in Baltimore.
Still in Baltimore right now.
My third favorite city in the country, Baltimore, Maryland. And we are really happy to be joined today by Farrah Pepper. Are you in New York, Farrah?
I am in New York. I live in the burbs outside the city, which pains me to say because I was in the city proper for decades.
Right. You are.
Your background is New York, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, New York by way of Coruscant.
Yeah.
Right.
Not a nerd.
Yeah.
Not at all.
No, we didn't. We noticed we didn't remark on that at all. So, hey, and let me make sure I get this right. You are the Chief Legal Innovation Counsel at Marsh & McLennan. Is that correct?
That is true. The short form is click because we make things click over here.
All right. Well, I see Farrah's going to fit right in with this group.
This is going to be awesome.
I got my dad jokes ready. I'm ready to roll.
There we go.
Perfect.
There we go. So, as always, I like to start off with this softball question. How did you get into this wacky business of ours?
And what were you thinking?
Yeah, what were you?
I was young, it happenstance, fate, destiny, call it what you will. I started out as a straight up litigator at a New York based firm, Gibson Dunn. When I went there, I thought I was going to practice in First Amendment law. That was actually how I ended up there. I had been a summer associate at Cahill and then went to Gibson Dunn. There weren't that many firms at the time that had a strong First Amendment practice, and that's where I thought I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Long story short, ended up finding myself doing a healthy amount of just litigation and investigation work because that pays the bills. Right. And as a pretty junior associate, started to see that there was this thing called Discovery, eDiscovery.
Dark side. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And people knew that it was a thing that had to be done, but no one really seemed to want to do it. It wasn't really a passion. It wasn't really organized. It wasn't really done in the most efficient way. And my nature is I'm a doer. I'm a fixer. So if I see a problem.
Are you talking about the current state of affairs or the past?
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah. Very true.
But I dove in. I actually enjoyed it because I viewed it as this big thorny problem. What I liked about it is it wasn't just law. It wasn't just tech. You had to be a psychologist, a therapist, a technologist, a lawyer. You had to be all of those things if you were going to really solve it. So I dove in. And again, I was pretty junior and, sort of made it my practice. Long story short, ended up founding the practice group, one of the founders over there at Gibson Dunn of the eDiscovery practice group.
Oh, nice.
And that led me on my way.
And then what was next? What came after that? After the guys?
Hold on. Did you have any kind of technology background? I mean, the fact
zero, nothing.
Zero.
Yeah.
Really.
Everything I learned on the job. I did a lot of self-education. I went to, and that's one thing I'll say, this industry, this group, I love it so much because when I was a baby lawyer and just getting my grounding, people were so generous with their time, with their knowledge. I went to every event I could. I soaked up the wisdom of those who came before me and then was able to basically self-teach and get myself where I needed to be, which is dangerous enough to know enough, but still at my heart be a litigator. Right. So it's a blend.
Cool.
Yeah, which it's interesting because we, as both on the show, but also talking to people just in general, it's interesting to hear the people who come at it initially from the legal side, and then from the people who come at it from the technology side. And I find that, the people who come at it from a legal side, but actually get the technology, even if, it's not coming naturally necessarily, but they dive in and it just gives them a much better rounding, because it's much natural to figure out the technology than it is to figure out the law, because the law doesn't make sense half the time.
Yeah, there are much more intuitive answers, I think, on the technology side sometimes. And, and here's another thing I'll note, when I started doing this, there was definitely a bit of a stigma too, because I had my bona fides, I went to all the right schools, I was at a prestigious firm, I was on a certain path. And then I started getting interested in this, and there were people who tried to talk me out of it, because they viewed it as something, I don't know, less prestigious perhaps than saying I'm just a litigator at a New York firm, and didn't view it as a career path that really had any longevity or any growth to it. And, I'm glad I ignored them. I listened, I took it to heart, but I was like, no, I think there's a real opportunity to do something here. I always used to say, it's like in law, a lot of it is settled. Like you do maritime law or some other specialty area, you're not writing new law, you're just interpreting what's already been done. Right. But in eDiscovery, when you got in early, you actually were writing the law, and you still are, because it's constantly evolving.
Your point, though, is one that I've heard many times. Browning Marion used to tell the story, and I met him years ago when I moved to San Diego. He was with Gray Carey before they, became Engulf and Devour. And he said he was sitting at his desk one day, and he had like a trash 180 or something, one of the really old computers, first computers. He's typing on his computer doing something, and a senior partner comes in, shuts the door behind him, and says, "Browning, if you're going to use that thing, you have to keep the door closed. It looks really bad for people to be walking by and seeing an attorney typing."
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, I was just like dumbfounded, like of the mental attitude. But it was that whole thing, like this is beneath you as a lawyer to be doing this techie stuff.
Yeah. Who wants to do techie stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, but you know what? It's one of those things. I always say, if you're someone who enjoys this field, you're special. It's a special breed of person. You're curious. You're not a snob. You might be crazy. I'm not going to judge. But, it has to be someone who's comfortable working in an ecosystem with a lot of different players. Yeah. And there's no room for ego. You're all part of a team. And that doesn't work for everyone.
But I'm old enough that when I was a young boy in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago, being called special had a whole different connotation.
I mean it in a good way. Yeah.
But
we're the chosen ones.
Exactly. There you go. Browning also used to say, the fun thing about this is, all those nerds who you used to make fun of when you were in high school and college, they're running the world now.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we need to talk to them.
Yeah.
I like your point, though, Farrah. I consider myself an interpreter. I'm the sort of person who can talk to the lawyers, and I can talk to the techies and bridge that gap, and then also explain it to the court, who, most judges are, of course, trial lawyers. There's a real need for that. I had it, I had a judge down here in a big case that we had in New Orleans who just said, "Can somebody explain this to me in plain English?" Well, if people were arguing, and she's looking at me while she's saying it. It's just like, that's a skill. That's a real skill.
That's right. Well, look, a lot of times good eDiscovery professionals are the Rosetta Stone of any particular team. They've got to connect everyone. And a less charitable analogy that I use sometimes is the ringmaster at the 15-ring circus.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. And don't turn your back on the lions.
That's right.
Right. Because they'll eat you alive.
So started at a law firm and saw the need just from the cases I was working on, where it became obvious someone had to do something, and I was really willing to raise my hand and be that someone. turned it into a formalized practice group, which was such an amazing experience. And to this day, I give such kudos to the leadership at my firm, because I came to them as a pipsqueak and basically said, I have this vision for this thing. And they were like, try it. And that's been a blessing of my career, that I've gone to different folks and said, I have this idea. And they've said, okay, try it, even if they didn't fully understand where it might lead. So that was great. I thought I was going to stay there forever, happily doing my thing. And then I got a cold call, which I normally don't even take, from a headhunter describing this job at GE, who at the time was a client of my firm, but not a client of mine. I hadn't worked with them. And they described this job, which honestly, as they were describing it, it's like, the sky opened up and the angels were singing. And I was like, this is me. This sounds like me. And they're describing, we want someone who's got the background, the gravitas, the equivalent of a law firm partner who could come internally and really run this for us and corral all of our many outside counsel and build something we've never done before. And I was like, oh. And then, I said, well, what's the catch? There's always a catch. And they said, well, we want someone who's going to move to Fairfield, Connecticut. It was like the record scratched. Right. And I'm like, you don't know this, but I'm a New Yorker. Like New Yorkers don't just up and move to Connecticut. That's just, I don't know if that's going to work. But
where is Fairfield?
It's it's pretty, it's deep. You got to drive probably about an hour, 20 minutes from Manhattan.
Sure, but it's up there, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's in there. So, and it's lovely. It's lovely. And I'll skip to the end, which is I ended up going there, but we worked out a deal. Because, it was such a perfect match, and I was like, but I thought I was going to stay at a firm, and they were like, but you're the one. And I'm like, I am the one. And so it was like a perfect marriage. And we worked out a deal where I reverse commuted from Manhattan, and a few days a week I'd drive out there, and the other days I'd work from home. And that also was a fortuitous event, because it led me on a path of being a huge proponent of virtual teams and seeing that it's entirely possible to have flexible ways of working. That experience was very formative for me, because at law firms, it's a little bit more FaceTimey, where people are just expected to sit there, although not now in pandemic time, but before. And I just had, what a masterclass in in-house life going to GE was. I had such love for that whole experience, and really learned how to be a client, learned to be internal. It's funny, I always say I came in and I thought I was like this touchy-feely, empathetic outside counsel, where I'm like, I'm really close with my clients. I really understand their needs. I'm going to just kill it in-house. And I think it was 3 days before internally at GE, I was like, what we really need here is more task codes and more reporting for outside counsel to be clear on what they're doing. It's like, I was like, wow, I had no idea, just the disconnect between what people were looking for. So that was amazing. Built the discovery program there. It was called the Discovery COE, had a fantastic experience, but now I'm in I would say my third iteration. So at Marsh & McLennan, the role I'm in is Chief Legal Innovation Counsel, which you might notice doesn't even have discovery in the title. And it's not because I'm not doing it. I'm still functioning in the role of Global Discovery Counsel. But to me, it was important to symbolize that it was something bigger now. My soapbox issue is that discovery, critical, always going to be there, crucial, but it's one use case, I think, of a larger paradigm, which is using technology in a smart way to plus what people do, the practice of law, the business of law. It's just threaded through everything. And discovery is just one really important way, I think, in which we use that technology. So, yeah.
Can you give an example or two of things that, I guess things that are public that you can talk about that of kind of how you're seeing the metamorphosis of technology, legal technology within a corporation, and how that's changed over the last few years?
Sure. I mean, this is probably as good a point as any for me to say everything I'm saying is in my personal capacity and not on behalf of my organization.
Absolutely.
And our views may not be reflective. Okay, so with that said, I think, well, look, there's pre-pandemic and there's post-pandemic. There really are, I think, different answers depending on what you say. Pre-pandemic, I would have said that there was a slow ever increasing interest amongst the population for how do we turbocharge our practice with technology. And so, one key example is that legal typically more resistant to things that the business just takes for granted. Things like, I don't know,
Computers.
matter intake. Computers. No, they got the computers down. That much we've got. Everyone's got an iPhone. Everyone's got their iPad.
Right.
We're cool there.
Yeah, iPhone. That's right. Yeah.
But the notion of we're going to use certain tools and systems to track what we do, whether it's matter intake, project management, billing is the one that had made the most inroads, I think, because people viewed it as least associated with practice.
Yep.
And, I think there was an increasing desire for people to say, okay, well, what tools are out there that can really help me do my job? And it started to, in the discovery space, really take hold, taking a look at the advanced search capabilities, looking at, AI, technology assisted review, that was making a toehold. What I think has really bounced up in the post-pandemic era, or let's call it, the age of enlightenment, is all of a sudden everyone's not just sort of cautiously open, they're eager. All of a sudden everyone's saying, show me what you got in the toolbox that might help me do my job better. All of a sudden, something like DocuSign is like the sexiest thing you've ever seen. And everyone's like, well, obviously, I only want to do all my contracts electronically.
Right.
Whereas, before, there might have been questions, is that appropriate? Do we need to do a 50-state survey in the US about legality? No. Now all of a sudden everyone's like, clearly this is the future.
Right. Just jump. Right.
Yeah,
jump
with
and
the
figure
proper
it out.
precautions, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. AI assisted, contract review, things as simple as NDAs. We're not content with just doing it the way we did it. Everyone's looking at what are the ways we can make this go better, faster, be cloud-based, be resilient, etc.
How much of that, if any, if is working its way down to state and local courts? And I say that because I came up against that issue, the DocuSign issue, this morning. The estate lawyer for Gail's estate called me and said, I need you to come down, you and your son, to come down and sign some affidavits. And I said, well, just email them to me. And he goes, well, no, I need you to sign them so I can notarize them. And I said, yeah, okay. Do you have Adobe? And he goes, oh, I know. You're talking about that whole Docker sign thing, right? And I'm going, yeah, right. Yeah, something like that. And I said, well, yeah. And he said, no, the court won't accept that. The court wants a hand-signed, notarized copy of your affidavits. And I'm thinking, so we have done a good job. We in our space have done a good job about not only dealing with the corporations and the law firms, but the courts to embrace technology as well. And I'm just wondering how long it's going to take. Or do you see that in, like, say, the New York courts? I mean, we are, a little bit on the fringe out here in Louisiana. Is that something that maybe in Metro New York, New Jersey, Connecticut is more commonplace in state courts? Do you see that at all?
So I think a lot of it is, I would say, jurisdictionally based or regionally based. There's definitely a lot more openness, a lot more discussion about that, at least in the parts that I'm in, generally like that New York City metro area.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And there's been a lot of hype around it too. You'll see a lot of bar association, discussions and meetings all about how, forget about just DocuSign, people are talking about how do you e-notary, and really take it to that next level. And so there was some special dispensation that was given during the pandemic, if memory serves. And I'm trying to remember exactly which courts it was, but definitely in the New York area, there was sort of a proclamation that for the duration of the pandemic, everybody was exempt from the face-to-face requirements. And so I like to think that once the horse is out of the barn and people see how efficient and easy something like this is, that it'll never go back. Right. Same thing with more remote video hearings and such.
Yep. And I as Rachi knows, I was a big, well, I can't say I was a big Teams user beforehand, because Rachi got me over to that, took me away from the dark side of Zoom into Teams. But I had been using Zoom for, well, in fact, it was Brownie who turned me on to it because I think DLA represented them when they started up the company. And that was a while ago. I mean, that this, like you said, the pandemic has pushed a lot of this. This isn't new technology. We're not, we didn't just invent the space shuttle yesterday. Come on, guys. Right. This technology has been there, but it took some sort of
global event.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Real experience to push it. I'm hopeful, like you, though, Farrah, that this will become the new normal, and we won't be going backwards to.
I think we are going to see in a couple of different areas where there traditionally has been a lot of pushback. So, for example, remote review, right? Where people were always like, I need my reviewers to be in a secure environment where I can be taking their cell phones away. And, yes, there are times when that is appropriate and needed, but people are getting comfortable now with that concept of I can have my reviewers be wherever they need to be. Although I'm being very distracted right now because Tom is he's
pixelated.
Yes.
he is one with the Force.
That's right.
I was thinking more. This is more Star Trek. He's like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, got a little distracted there. But yeah, I think there's a lot of areas now that have opened up that people are willing to at least say, okay, we have no choice, so let's figure out how to make this work in the best way possible. Now the question is, okay, when we get back to quote unquote normal, does that stick?
Right.
I think it's gonna, because it's gonna, as we're seeing, normal is a long way away.
Right.
The virus didn't disappear this summer. It didn't disappear the day after the election. It's not going to go away next month. It's going to take 6-9 months to implement a solid vaccination program. This is not something that's going to change, unfortunately, by Jazz Fest next year. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I'll go a step further and I'll say for someone like me, where my focus is on change, positive change, I feel like this is the moment. This is the moment to make sure it doesn't go back, to be very intentional about it, to be an advocate. And, we, like many organizations, are talking about not just going back to normal. Who wants to go back to normal? You want to build back better. And if you believe in that, if you buy into that hype, that this is a seismic opportunity where you can build something better as a result, then anything we used to do by definition is suspect. Yeah. You want to revisit and make sure we're doing more. And so I'm excited about this. I think not only should we not go back, but this is a chance to go a step further.
One might almost say this is the way.
One might.
So Farrah, you mentioned earlier the fact that one of the things early in your career you had the opportunity to get educated, to learn from everyone around you. People were open and willing to talk you through and help you as you were coming up through the ranks here. Right now, as things are getting pushed and it's becoming the new normal and innovation is, at the forefront, and change and everything that you're all about, everything that you're trying to do there at Marsh, what do you see in terms of the challenge around education, the challenge around, okay, I can have this great idea, I can, everyone can be accepting of the technology, but how do we actually implement it? How do we actually get people up to speed where they might be okay with the concept, but now in reality and in practical terms, how do we get them there? How do we get them to where they need to be? And Tom, I don't know what's going on over there with the video.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. We are having very high winds. We're having about 30 mile per hour winds. So our third world infrastructure here in New Orleans is being stretched.
Got it. So at least we
very
still have
new age.
So.
Oh, we are. We're on the cutting edge of technology down here. By cutting edge, mean 8-track tapes.
So back to the education question.
Yes.
What do you see in terms of what's happening right now to get people, because it takes a different type of effort, I think, to go from the I want to change and here's my ideas for change to actually here's how we are going to get people to come along with us.
Oh, yeah. And so you're talking about internally, like my colleagues,
Yeah.
specifically in our legal compliance and public affairs department. I mean, I think there's a tried and true formula there, which hasn't changed at all, which is really, learn by doing, find your early adopters, get people who are willing to muck around. It becomes self-perpetuating. Over and over, we will introduce new concepts to people, let them try it out. If they like it, they sell it. You know what I mean? Like they are going to talk to other people and say, it would be perfect for you, this thing I tried out, and so on. So in a sense, there's this grassroots movement that happens. I would also say, this probably isn't the greatest analogy, and I should probably revise it, but I all the time talk about giving people their first hit. Like if you give them a little bit of the crack for free, then they'll come back and pay for it. So there's an element of that too, where when you run these kind of pilots, you want to find people who. What's that?
You are a New Yorker.
I am. I don't want to give the wrong idea that I'm like standing on street corners dealing, but in a sense you are, because you're bringing all these cool things to the table. You're saying, hey, I think you're really going to like this. And guess what? Why don't you try it out? No charge, no bill back. Like, let's not worry about that budget stuff right now. Try it out. And if you love it, then we'll talk about, what that looks like for, an annual license or whatever it may be. So we've done a lot of really fun things that way. And it's helpful for me too, because look, I don't pretend going into it that I always know what's going to be a hit. I have my sense, and I try to bring things to the table that I think are going to be 100% successful. But if it's a dud and people don't want it, well, great. Let's pivot and move to something else. And so there's this notion of let's just do it. Let's just try it. Let's not spend a year building the perfect program, then roll it out and find out why people hate it. Let's socialize it and do it sooner. So anyway, so we've got that kind of iterative flow going.
Right. Who's willing to? Sorry, Rocky. Who's willing to listen to that approach though? More law firms or businesses? And I think I know the answer to this, but
businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, well, for a lot of reasons, there's a lot of pressure on in-house professionals. There always has been, to get a lot done with less resources than you might get at a law firm, but with still the very same exacting standards of quality. And in fact, a lot of people in-house started their careers at law firms. It's a training ground of sorts.
Sure.
And so, there's a lot of pressure to get stuff done, but there's also, we are the business. We're attached to these creative people who day in and day out are solving problems for clients. And so that ethos rubs off, which is amazing. You don't necessarily always have that same mindset at a law firm. It's a very different business model.
Yep.
Right. I think you also realize that perfection. We always talk about in eDiscovery and in law that perfection is not necessarily the bar that has to be met. But I think there's still an idea within legal that you got to get as close to perfection because law is pure. Law is is black and white. Even when you can maneuver in the gray, there's still, it says it or it doesn't say it, and there's that level. Whereas in a business, from the business side, you realize that okay, I don't have to come up with this thing that's going to make $100 million because, or $1 billion or whatever the, whatever level you're on. But as long as if 90 million's okay, it's as long as I'm cash positive and doing the right things, then I can get away with not being perfect. And I think that rubs off, also coming from a corporate legal department, where yes, you want to be doing as good as you possibly can, but you're dealing with the realities of the situation also.
I couldn't agree more.
right?
Absolutely. Well, and Rocky, that was something I had to go through because coming from a law firm mindset, it was definitely perfection and nothing less. That's what you're paid the big bucks for, right?
Yep.
When I went in-house, I had to retrain my thinking a little bit, and you start to say phrases like what Tom just said. Well, perfection is the enemy of the good, and the 80-20 rule, and all of a sudden you're rationalizing the fact that
right.
yeah,
Close
it
enough for
doesn't have
government
to be
work.
perfect. Well, and I find those are two warring factions within myself. I still
Sure.
strive for that perfection, but there are times where you have to catch yourself and say, you just got to get it done.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So let's switch gears a little bit. I was curious, and I know one of the answers here, but pandemic, you're home, lots of time with family, and what have you taken on yourself? What have you decided to work towards during this time?
Well, some people taught themselves skills, learned to bake the perfect banana bread, write new languages. Some people wrote their magnum opus. Not in our family. So it's myself, my husband Josh, and we've got two girls, ages 7 and 10. And what we committed ourselves to during this pandemic was watching a variety of classic movies, classic defined by me, a child of the 80s.
80s, 90s.
Correct. Yep. That's the right answer. Thank you, Rocky. Right. As well as really deep diving into the extended universe of Star Wars and watching all 7 seasons of the Clone Wars, 4 of Rebels, and even the movies that people don't like. So we really committed ourselves to that, and I am proud to say we've done it.
You accomplished your goal.
Yeah,
wow.
We accomplished our goal. I'm teaching my girls what's important in life. I feel really good about what we're all coming out of the pandemic with here. Exhaustive knowledge of Star Wars.
Good.
Which I think translates well into working with lawyers, honestly.
Oh, yes? Do tell.
Well, the complete exposure to alien cultures and people who are unwilling to talk to you on your terms and having to understand a whole new language, right? And social activities. And who shot first? Yeah.
Well, and the fact that evidence can be doctored and who shot first can be altered.
That's right. Yep, that's right. Deep fakes, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, and I will say, other than that, pandemic time has been weird for us. My husband works at a hospital. So he's in the city at a cancer hospital, and he actually got COVID pretty early on, like before they even had the routine testing and everything. So back in April, we went through that whole experience with him being quarantined in our basement. And I basically throw food at the top of the stairs and then slam the door and run away. So, that was pretty crazy too. And I'll tell you, one thing it sort of teaches you is that you really can adapt to anything. You really can do anything. I mean, he was home from work for 6 weeks, still feeling sick, and thank goodness he's fine now. He's back at work and everything. But I got to tell you, this thing from the beginning, quite a stressor. It was real, and just seeing I would say the crazy division in our country and the basically the political connotations that have been ascribed to whether people think COVID is real or not. I don't know. I'm here to tell you it is real and it sucks. So, it's kind of crazy out there right now.
Yeah. And the kids home from school, I assume, or are they doing in-person school or?
No, they were home. They got sent home in March and then were home throughout the summer, but their school went back live in September and they've been monitoring carefully. And what they do is if anybody in a class is positive, they send that class home for 2 weeks.
The entire class, right.
My eldest daughter is actually home on a 2-week quarantine right now, because someone in her class was positive. Thank goodness so far she doesn't seem to be, but it's touch and go. Last week for no reason, they shut down the entire school. So my younger one was home as well. I mean, this is what when I talk about flexible teams and virtual work, thank goodness we're as evolved as we are right now, because I'm able to continue doing what I'm doing without missing a beat while having a complete clown show going on around me of people in, out, home, remote.
Right. That's why you keep the virtual background. So,
That's right. You don't need to know what's going on back here.
No, exactly.
Well, that's no different than working at a law firm. So you have the exposure of having worked in that environment before.
Well, my kids might be more polite.
Yeah, no might about it. No might about it.
Okay. Well, Tom, why don't you wrap us up with a final question here?
All right. As always, the legendary final question. So we ask everybody at the end, Farrah, if they could spend one day with anybody in our profession, living or dead, and not necessarily in a work-related way, but if you could just spend a day doing whatever, fishing, going to a Star Wars marathon, you know, going to Comic-Con. Exactly. If you could do that with somebody from our profession, living or dead, who would you choose?
So I hope this doesn't sound like pandering, but the honest answer, Tom, is Gail. I never got to meet her, but I have seen the outpouring of love that has come from the community, just about the person she was and what she meant to everyone. And I would love, love, love to have spent the day grabbing drinks and going shoe shopping with her. She sounds like she was quite a woman, and sorely missed by all.
Well, I appreciate that. If you're a shoe lover, you would have bonded with Gail. I alluded at the beginning to, we're going through her clothes. We had to do this in phases, much like COVID. We went through and got all the so-called normal clothes, jeans and T-shirts, and the 2 pairs of flat shoes. And I'm serious now, Farrah. I'll send you some pictures. I've probably given away about 1/3 of her shoes. The problem with shoes, of course, is you have to be the right size. There's no fudge factor. So she probably had 500 or 600 pairs of shoes.
Wow.
Yeah. She had a 2-bedroom apartment, and the second bedroom was a closet. She turned it into a closet with actual racks from clothing stores for her clothes, and then shoe racks. And so we've given away about 1/3 so far, but that's proving to be the biggest problem is, of course,
Finding.
Well, as Rocky knows, her shoe style tended more towards the, shall we say,
flashy,
yes, and would fit, I think, more in a, like, she would fit in the Star Wars empire very well. But I literally, this is so, this is typical. I'm sitting on her front porch the other day, taking a break, smoking a cigar. 2 young ladies walk by. They look like they're in their 20s. And one of them is wearing a pair of high-heeled boots similar to what Gail would wear. And so, of course, I do the complete aqualung on them. Hey, ladies, hey, excuse me. Can I ask you what shoe size you are? Yeah. And they both look at me like, oh, come on, you lech. And I said, no, listen.
Dealer on the corner,
Yeah. I said, no, listen, it's completely innocent. Trust me. You don't know me, but trust me.
Yes.
And I said, my wife just died, and she's got all these shoes inside, and they're just like those. And I said, what, she's an 8.5, and the woman with the Gale shoes says, well, I'm a 10. She was a very tall, slender young lady. But her friend goes, well, I'm an 8.5. And I said, well, come on down.
Wow.
She came in and picked out 5 or 6 pairs that, she thought she could get away with. But I mean, that's it. We're literally down to soliciting strangers on the street to give away her shoes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But Farrah, I think you would have a good time trying to keep up with Gail.
Oh, shopping in New York?
Entertaining to watch that.
Shopping in New York was a delight with her. Remember a couple of years ago at Legal Tech how it was snowing so miserably? It was like an awful, awful day. Didn't stop her. No, I'm going out shopping. See you back at the hotel. She comes back covered in snow about 4 hours later. Her attitude was she'd go to a store and camp in a store and, try things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wasn't out in the snow. Yeah.
Right. Forget about Legal Tech. Come on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So. Well, and I don't know if you knew this, but for years, up until 2 years ago, in the hotel at the same time as Legal Tech, there was a shoe.
Yep.
Right? It was Fashion Week. And all the
Fashion Week. I thought it was literally like a shoe convention.
No, there was always a shoe show. Like
the shoe guys were in the hotel. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it was for dealers and buyers from stores. it wasn't a retail thing. But of course, Gail was out front smoking, and so were all the people from the shoe show, and she started talking. They said, "Oh, nice shoes. What are you wearing?" And one thing led to another. And the next thing you know, Gail is up on the 15th floor, wandering up and down, and she had her picture taken. Got to chat with who's the guy with the shoes with the red soles?
Christian Louboutin?
Christian Louboutin.
Oh my God. She was way cooler than the rest of us, right?
That was the highlight of the week for her. Not that she met John Tredenick or Bill Gates or, anyway. No. I met Christian Louboutin. My life is
awesome. That's awesome. The rest of us suckers were talking about AI and the law.
Yeah, exactly.
So what were we thinking?
What were we thinking about, right? So, anyways, thanks for that comment. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it, Rocky. Any last comments?
I think other than Farrah, thank you for joining us. This was awesome.
My pleasure. It's so good to stay
to
connected with you guys. I know, and like here's to when we can, we'll hoist a drink in person. Maybe at Legal Tech, maybe with shoes.
Maybe I don't think Legal Tech's going to happen, right?
No.
But maybe
not this year. No, it's definitely
2022.
virtual. 2022. Planning ahead.
Maybe Relativity Fest next year. Maybe.
That's ambitious. Maybe.
That's October, so that could happen.
Well, watch this space. Let's see what happens.
Right. There you go. So thanks so much. Yeah, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in person. And thanks for everybody listening in. We will be back whenever we'll be back. We're not quite sure. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another guest on the eDiscovery channel. Thank you.
Thanks.